What is up, everybody? Another episode of Dentistry Invest podcast. This is an extra super duper special one because I've got sat in front of me a gentleman who has been extremely successful in the world of dentistry, but is also extremely humble, and they're my favorite types of people. His name is Mr. Kaival Patel, and he is the owner and founder, if I've got this right, Kaival, of the Kana Health Group, which I've seen a lot about on social media. So we're going to be getting into that journey and the learnings and the lessons and what that is very soon. But before we do that, Kaival, how are you today?
I am amazing, James. Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. I'm really excited to be here, and I hope that I can provide any of your listeners or anybody even one nugget of goodness or help. So yeah, thank you so much for having me on. Really appreciate it.
Hey, listen, absolute pleasure, mate. And I love these episodes because what they tend to become or what they tend to be is more or less biographics, effectively, of what people have achieved.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that there's going to be a lot to talk about on that front today. But anyway, Cable, I'm very conscious this is your first time on Dentistry Invest podcast. So if we
Mhm.
were happy, if you were happy to do a little bit of a high level bio, something along those lines, and then we can get into your journey and Kana Health Group and what that is, because it's dental practice, but it's also a whole load of other things as well, which we're going to reveal in just a moment. So if you're happy to do a bio, that might be a good way to kick things off.
Yeah, so my wife Shreena and I we're the yeah, you're right, the founders and owners of the Kana Health Group, which is a group of practices based in Milton Keynes and Bedford. We've also got a teaching academy called the Kana Academy, where we have an aesthetic and restorative diploma for dentists, which will be progressing to courses for therapists, hygienists, nurses, all in hopefully in the next sort of 12 to 24 months. Also a business and management course as well. So yeah, we're based in Milton Keynes, and we've been loving it for a few years now.
Awesome. Well, here's the thing. I'm just curious. Whenever it comes to your journey and whenever it comes to Canna Health Group, and this is something that we were talking about off camera, whenever you get into the world of being a principal and running a dental practice, and I've had people like this on the podcast as well, they just keep going in that area and then they get their 30 dental practices, something along those lines. And it's amazing. And what I'd
Yeah.
love to learn about was your mindset whenever it came to you deciding, right, we're actually going to expand a little bit beyond just purely being a principal in the conventional sense and also have courses and everything along those lines. But we'll come back to that. Anyway, Kevo, let's
Yes.
talk about your journey.
Yeah.
You qualified from dentistry 2007, you told me earlier?
2008.
Oh, 2000. Oh, it's
2008.
1 year out.
Yeah,
My
yeah.
bad. My
One
bad.
year out. 1 year
One
out.
year out.
Yeah.
All good. All
What's a year
good.
between friends?
Oh, what is the year between friends? 12 months, they go fast. Anyway, but yeah, so you qualified in 2008. And did
Yeah.
you always want to be a principal? Did you always want to build an empire? Or, you know what? Things around about that era for me are a little hazy, so you mightn't even remember, but I thought I'd ask a question anyway.
Yeah, I think it's strange. So I think at different aspects of my career, of my life, I've just wanted different things. So when I qualified, so I qualified from Manchester, love Manchester, great sort of party town or city. Had met amazing friends and everything, but I always knew I wanted to come back home, which is Milton Keynes. So found a VT job in Northampton, and then had my one and only job interview after that with a chap called Rescue, who had a practice in Wellingborough, which is near Northampton. And actually, I learned a lot in my time as an associate. So I had a big sort of NHS component there, lots of UDAs. But I used that time to progress my skills. So I did an implants master's degree. I learned sedation and design, all these things. But what I think I learned the most is I was in this environment where Resh used to bring speakers into the place, and he used to have us collaborate together. Lovely social environment as well. So, like dentistry is in theory a really lonely place. It's you and your nurse in a box for however many hours a day. Whereas this sort of community aspect, and he did it in sort of he had I think three sort of sites or two sites based over three locations. But he did it in a really, really nice way. And I think that's what I sort of learned. And I always felt that that was where I wanted to take my career. I just didn't know how for a long time, really. So then Yeah, I met, or I was sort of an associate there for a number of years. Knew that I wanted something, and I think we were speaking off air, and we both had this itch. And I'm sure you can get cream for it, but the actual itch is to go and do something, you know. And I always never really knew what I wanted to do. I always knew I just wanted to progress and you know do something really. And then I married a dentist, Shreena, my wife now. And when we were getting married, actually, we we thought, well, we're both dentists, and the parents were in the back of our mind as well, and in areas that you're both dentists, you should, you know, it makes sense to own a dental practice. Um, we thought, yeah, obviously that makes sense. And you know, don't do that. Don't do that as your plan of action. You got to plan a little bit more than that. But whereas we thought, well, yeah, we're both dentists. We're going to own a practice. That's going to be life. And actually, we found a practice when we were getting married, and we were due to complete on that practice 2 weeks before the wedding day. So it was a crazy sort of time of our lives. But then actually that practice ended up falling through because the guy selling it had set up another site on the other side of town, and was asking all his patients to move over to the new site, which is a bit naughty. And we found out on the grapevine, but literally 2 weeks before the wedding day was going to complete, and it was 2 weeks before that we found all of this out. So we've gone through the whole process, whole due diligence, legals, everything, spent a lot of money, but we had to bail out, you know, at that time. So that was a sort of first intake into potential practice ownership. But I think at that point, you know, when you're going through the due diligence, you have all these plans and aspirations of what you're going to do to the new place and how you're going to take your own stamp there and everything else. And we knew that, okay, well, we wanted to own that practice. So went through probably another dozen or so site visits, different practices, put a few offers in different practices. None of it come to any avail. And then found this one place, beautiful building in Milton Keynes, big place, massive car park, really old established list. I loved it and went to go see it, got along really well with the owners and put in the offer. And I thought, well, this is it. And it got rejected as well.
Ah, man.
So this was in 2014. But then well, I was on holiday a few months later, and you know what? By that time, I'd just given up because I've seen so many places. I've you know went through all this process. You get excited so many times, just given up. But I on the off chance I was on holiday, and I just pinged them an email and said, "Look, how's things going with the sale? Hope you guys are well." And they came back to me and said, "Well, actually, the people buying it, the finance isn't seemingly going through, or there was some issue with the sale." So I was in Dubai, I think, and I called my the bank the bank manager that was helping us for the previous sale that fell through. So he already knew us. We already had a relationship. I said, "Look, I need a letter showing that I'm good for the money for this offer.
I'm
Send
good.
that,
Hey.
send me that letter, and I'm going to email it over to them." I emailed it over to them, and they accepted the offer. And a few months later, we had the first practice in 2015. So yeah, that's a little bit of how it all started.
You know, I love stuff like that. It's all about opening doors, isn't it? You know, because that email, that was a little bit of a dice roll, just like, "Hey, I'm here. How's it going?" Something along those lines. And that's the thing about, I heard a saying the other day. Hopefully, I can remember this correctly. Something along the lines of, the thing about opportunities is they look like risk at the time. It's only in the rear view mirror that you realize there are opportunities. And this is the thing, you know. So that was a huge opportunity because it led to such amazing things. But buying a practice, naturally risky. Have you always been so
It
risky?
is.
Have you always had that sort of your character? You know, you like to roll the dice sort of thing, or was that like a skill you had to build with time? Have you always had that element to your persona? I'm just curious.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I have, and actually that's why Shreena is my you know yin to the yang really. So she's very risk averse, and she's the one that will sense check things that I'm you know looking into. And but also I think as time's gone on, you know, it's a case of well, you know, Cable, if you believe in something, you dream in something, you're going to make it happen. So you know there is that sort of freedom with it. But obviously it happens over time. You know, at that point we've got nothing. We were she was just expecting our first child. But we don't have the funds behind us. We didn't have tons of savings or anything like that. We didn't come from money in terms of family, which were always there to support us, but it wasn't that, that sort of safety blanket there. So everything had to sort of work, for it to have, and you had to go into it 100%. You couldn't be half-assed with it because you're not going to get anywhere.
And I actually think that that's the thing that sometimes makes or breaks the risk, the thing that you've invested in, so to speak, is how much you believe in it, right? And it doesn't mean that it is going to pan out, but it gives it the best chance possible. And that's why, not to get too ethereal and philosophical, but even if you just bring it right back to how strong your convictions are, that can actually give you the greatest likelihood of succeeding. And again, not to get too ethereal as well, but whether you win or lose, the opportunity pans out, it's the things that you learn that will then be useful
Yes.
to you later in life and in the next opportunity that comes along. So you're always winning if you make it about the learnings in a way.
Yeah.
Anyway. Okay, so you got the
Yeah,
first
100%.
practice. Yeah? You agree with me?
Really? Yes, 100% right. 100% right.
Yeah.
You are. Yes, yeah.
That's what gets me fired up right there. Look at big time, man. You always, if you make it about the learnings, you're always winning, man. Always winning. Anyway, so got the first practice
Yeah.
and got it up and running. Did it go smoothly? Did it not go smoothly? How did that look?
Yeah. So made every mistake going, James. Literally every mistake. So it was a massive place, 7 surgeries. We had no idea about the business side of dentistry. Um, and um, and the aim was basically big place, big patient base. I was really into implants at that point, done that, degree in it. And and the plan was for me to be a bit of a nomad, so working between whatever there was spare space in the surgeries, and just do the implant side of things, sedation, and Invisalign, or short-term orthodontics, because they didn't do any of that in that place. So that's where the big potential was in this in the practice, is they didn't do anything higher end. So that was going to be the aim. But ultimately, and I was so enthusiastic. So even before we bought the practice, I bought a CBCT machine, right? So it's there, ready to sort of go in. By bought, I've got the finance agreed and everything is ready to sort of move in. So literally week one, where ready to sort of go, bought the practice, got the keys, and I'm wanting to install this CBCT machine, where the practice has probably not done anything in like 10 years. And then there's me suddenly wanting to get a CBCT machine, get everything in there going, and change the whole place up. And all the dentists there were probably on the latter stage of their career, and it was a complete disparity between me and what me and Shreena wanted to do there, and where they were in their career. And then gradually, I sort of got ground down because it felt like I was always on this sort of uphill. Anything cool I did, new uniform, new equipment, and I wanted all this tech stuff and whatever else. But I just didn't have, the team that wanted it to.
Support.
Um,
Is that a good word?
so support, and they just weren't on the same page, and they were not bad people. They're brilliant dentists, had lovely patient bases, but it was completely just not on that same path. And I think that's what I learned the most in those first few years, is actually, you know, if I have that vision and if I have that pathway, then I need the team. It can't just be me in a practice wanting to make it happen. I have to have the people around me to do it. And I did a sort of article recently about squat practices versus buying existing practices, and that's the big downside to an existing practice sometimes, is you're inheriting a team that already have a different sort of culture and belief, whereas the squat practice, you can get that going from day one.
Well, just to interject slightly, just for a second, this is the thing, right? Because when you've got that entrepreneurial energy, you're just full of beans. Like, you literally buzz off change, right? And it's hard to remember that maybe 95% of people are not really like that. You know what I mean? Or
Yeah,
maybe it's not whether they are or they aren't. Maybe just not to the same degree. Yeah.
yeah.
And you come in and you're all excited, and from your perspective, you're just like, right, everybody's gonna love this. Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
But
How
how
can
you
they not?
actually, yeah, this is it, right? Because you just think everybody thinks like you or like us or whatever, yeah. And
Yeah,
you gotta be. It's a big lesson to learn, isn't it? We've all been there, and yeah, how can I say this? So how you come across is the new young guy, right? The upstart who's in here to mix stuff up and change things and break things and cause all sorts of chaos. That's how you can come across. So it's just about negotiating that, right? So how did you negotiate it? I'm just curious to know.
Yeah, to be honest, so I think this was the biggest mistake, and it's the thing that we don't do in any of the new practices we sort of take over. And I just let it fly, for a long time. I sort of let them get on with whatever they were doing, and I built the practice around them. And I don't suggest this, but that's what I saw a niche in Milton Keynes where all the referrals were going elsewhere. So actually, and this was a big place that had surgery space and everything else. And so I created a referral center in that first practice, and got the marketing out there. I love marketing. We did a lot of marketing in and around the area, got amazing specialists involved, and actually started this sort of referral base, part of the business, which I loved, and it was something new and exciting and different. I did my thing. Like I said, I never took over anybody's room. I literally was, whenever there was free days, I'd work in those. I was like this nomad going between surgeries, but I just got on with my business, my work. But I think when you look back on it, we didn't know the numbers in the place. And actually I was earning less as a principal than I was as an associate, which is common. I hear it all the time, but it's there's this perception of principals and whatever they do, but actually, yeah, earning a lot less, and I was earning less take home, but I was grossing more. In terms of the practice, I'm grossing a lot of money there, but it was all getting sucked into the practice.
Yeah.
And yeah, so but that's what I did. I sort of moved around it. And then eventually it came to a point where I was getting a little bit, I guess, upset, or I felt like the practice wasn't mine. I don't know if that makes sense, but it felt like I was going into a business on certain days, and it wasn't my energy. It wasn't my. I was trying to fight almost on a daily basis, and I think that's the point where we just said, actually, do you know what? We've done it for a little while. We understand the business a little bit more. We need our own North Star. We need to know what we're trying to achieve. And then people are either on board or they're not, at that point. And it took a few years to transition, that side of it, and a bit of help when COVID arrived and all these sort of things, ironically. But it took that time, 4 or 5 years probably to make that happen. And then when it happened, it was like just a breath of fresh air. When you get rid of a bit of negativity in a place, you don't notice that's there, but it's just this sort of pressure wheel that's going on around you. And then suddenly it's gone, and there was just this calm, and the zen. And then you realize, actually, I did the right thing, because this is exactly what I need to do to move and progress. And I had a whole different mindset. And I could do things I wanted to do, which is all positivity, and it was all development, for the practice.
Do you know what? Interestingly, I knew that it's important to kind of crystallize our North Star and what have you, but I didn't fully appreciate how important that was until I read a book very recently called Traction by Gino Wickman. Have you ever read it?
I've not read it, no,
Oh
no.
my God, it's such a good book, especially
Yeah,
for business owners, right? And once upon a time, I used to be like kind of cynical about that stuff, like, oh yeah, North Star, Airy Fairy, whatever, right? I didn't really get it, and now I'm the exact opposite, and I'm like, actually, that's essential, right? Because how can you say that someone is a good fit or not a good fit unless you know what you're trying to achieve and where you're going to go, right? Like it's a little bit like if you're going on a journey point A to point B, then you got to actually define where point B is before you can
yeah.
say that you're literally going in the right direction or you're going in the exact opposite. Until you do that, well, it's not defined. So I like that book because it gives you a methodology to do that. And as you
Yeah,
said,
but I think there's a limit to it as well, because there's loads of people that have mapped out the next 30 years, but so much changes within that time, within your personal life, within professional life, within the economy and everything else, that I feel like, if you've got a general theme of what you're trying to achieve, but things will change. If I speak to you 5 years, James, things would have been completely different for yourself and probably for me from what we expected. So, but I think if you're generally in that trajectory, then you're on the right route.
you're right. Over planning is definitely a thing too, and we definitely
Yeah.
need to be conscious of that. So it sounds like you went through that journey or series of epiphanies, yourself. And then what did you, okay, this will be brilliant, right? Because not only have you implemented that, you actually saw the results of implementing that as well. And you touched upon this just now. You said that there were certain people that were not necessarily aligned, and maybe recognizing that is a little bit like ripping off a band-aid. You got to do it, basically.
Yeah.
And then how did things shift after that? Did that give you clarity on the next practice and the next practice and the next practice? I'm curious.
Yeah. So 2015 we got the first one. 2017 we got the second one, which was also in Milton Keynes. And the plan at that point was, and actually we literally had two kids at this in the same years of those two practices. So the joke was every practice I get, I'm going to have a kid. So I had to just move away, out next door for any future practices, just in case. But yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
I'll let it. We'll let everybody do their own math on that one, shall we? What Kaival
so
thinks
20,
there.
yeah, 2017, we got the second practice, and Shreena was working in there. And that was going to be life. So I was in this one, she was in the other. Again, it's another large site. And then COVID hit. So obviously 2020, and um, I had this eye condition. I think I was probably winking at too many people in my younger days. But since I was sort of 21, I had this eye condition, and during COVID, it really flared up. So I think it must have been the stress and everything else going on,
Jeez.
around it. And I remember, like not really properly being able to see, in front of me large, longer distances. And I thought, everything was closed at that point. So I thought I just maybe my glasses need a change or whatever. And but I ended up finding out that the flare up that, the condition I had really flared up at that time. So at that point, you sort of had to make a call where I just felt like I didn't want the clinical side of dentistry to be taken away from me. I want it to be my choice, whether it's going to happen or not. And incidentally, actually, my eye, I saw a specialist, and it's much better, and everything sort of worked out. But during that time, you didn't know, everything was closed. All you had is time to think, and sort of plan out. And actually, I spoke to Shreena, and we both decided, well, we actually like the business side of dentistry. We loved the clinical side before, but we actually and we were on this entrepreneur program with a bank, which was amazing actually. And if anybody can get onto any of these programs, I really highly recommend it, because you were in environments that were not dentists. It
Oh,
was
I like
it, it
that.
was it was startup businesses with loads of energy, loads of them wanting to make their career sort of go. Yeah, and what we realized actually which was a bit unusual, is both Trina and I both love the business side of dentistry. Whereas often in a couple, there might be one that loves the clinical side a bit more than the business side, or vice versa. So, but and also COVID allowed us to run the numbers. So we figured out break even points per surgery per day in the practices, and all these things to figure out why we weren't really earning that money. And we realized that actually, you know, we had to do one of two things. One is either grow the business, or the second is tighten up. And we're very much on growth, So we figured out ways that we can grow the practices, adding a surgery. So the 7 surgery place became an 8 surgery. We factored in these things, but also the development side. We wanted to upskill our team, our dentists, and make them enjoy coming to work, enjoy the and like I said to you before, we have people that weren't aligned with us initially, but actually at this point we're hiring people that want to develop, want to learn. And actually, I say in my interviews all the time, there's loads of associate positions out there. Go for it, But if you want to develop, if you want to progress yourself, then we're the right place, because that's what we want from you. And if you don't, we're probably not the right place, because that's not the ethos we have it within our group. So yeah, but to make it happen and to make me move out of the clinical side, we had to grow the group, and that's where Kana Health Group actually came about, because by that point it was just Oxford House, the name of the practice, Wilson House. But we thought, yeah, we need a brand, we need to grow that brand, and as we do, we need to have grow the group actually, and go from there. But we always grew it knowing the types of practices we wanted to buy, locality, and these sort of things were important as well, around it. So yeah.
Wow, and that actually was something I was really keen to explore and talk about today, because it's so easy to just keep getting the next dental practice and the next dental practice, and absolutely nothing wrong with that, by the way. If you
Yeah.
want to become very successful, doing that. And I guess it'd be interesting to explore the mindset which made you think, actually, this is bigger than just dental practice, and I want to go into the education side of things and everything along those lines. So if I got that right, that's what Kana Health Group is. It's the dental practice and also the education. Maybe there's more to it as well.
Yeah, so in terms of the education part, we used to hold courses for our own associates from the get-go, really. But um, everything's really based in London, in Manchester, and there's a whole big middle part of the country. And a lot of our associates, if they wanted to do a structured course, would have to travel, and let's say they were, coming back of maternity, all these sort of things. It just didn't make it easier.
Oh
And I
man.
love the development side of it. So I'm very grateful to a lot of people a lot of the speakers that ended up coming onto course because we were nothing, nobody heard about us. I reached out to what I felt were the best speakers in each sort of category, and said, look, I'd really like to host a course in Milton Keynes, which has got some teeth behind it, so an accreditation with it, and it'll be a diploma. Are you guys on board? And all the guys that are on our course, in terms of the speakers, they all literally gave up their time. They got involved with it, and we created this aesthetic and restorative diploma for dentists. Had this facility, which was like it was a training. Well, we used it for our meetings opposite one of the practices. Converted that into a beautiful sort of educational, place, speakers and screens and lighting and all this sort of stuff. And then it'll be 3 years ago now. We had our sort of first course, first year, first cohort, and from then it's really grown. But I love being the middle guy, James. I love bringing people together. So I felt I couldn't teach, and certainly the clinical side of it. But I wanted the best speakers in these categories to be there, and people not having to travel all over the place. But our USP was then to try and attract local dentist, and that got blown out of the water. We had people from Ireland coming over, and we had from all over the country. So I think the actual course itself is very good, and the speakers and the education content is good. So now it's just the USP is it's a great bloody course, with a lot of learning, a lot of hands-on element to it, and then from then I always wanted. I mean, our rule in the group is you might be with me for like 1 year or 5 years or 10 years or to the end of your career, but during that period I want you to have progressed, and that's whether you're a dentist or a nurse or a reception team member or a practice manager. So I want the academy to be a hub for the whole wider team, and that's what we're developing going forward. And then the next sort of stage of Kana Health Group, I think, is to have different elements in different businesses in part of dentistry. So we're probably going to have a recruitment arm, and sort of go from there. And it's why we called it Kana Health Group, and rather than just Kana Dental Group. And at one point I was looking at different sort of healthcare businesses, which might look at in the future, but trying to get time and focus and not go in too many directions and lose focus, I think is a critical part.
You're so right. And listen, two things that you said that I just want to pick up on. I'm going to circle right back to something you were saying maybe like 10, 15 minutes ago. And it was about how you went on an entrepreneur's course that was not full of dentists, right? And it really, really, really does shift your thinking when you meet people who are outside of the sphere. And
Yeah,
with love, we all don't realize how much we think like dentists until we
yeah,
meet people who aren't dentists. Like we just do, right? And I mean that in a nice way.
yeah,
And listen, those are the sorts of things that led me to Dentistry Invest as well, like exploring finance, which is helpful for dentists, but not dentistry, basically. And then
mhm,
obviously that led to the group, the community, all the things that I'm hugely grateful for and hugely proud of, and hoping to expand those and for those to continue growing. But like I said, that all started through me exploring outside of dentistry. And if I could go back and talk to myself when I was younger, I'd say, James, do more of that, right?
yeah,
But at the same time, you just need to pour a little bit of cold water on that, don't you, Kaival? Because all of a sudden you can be like, right, wow, I'm gonna go crazy and do all this other
yes,
stuff. That's the constant struggle of an entrepreneur, right? There's that balance, yeah, between being focused and also thinking laterally. And if
yeah.
you're too lateral, you're too scatterbrained. If you're too focused, you're sometimes missing out on opportunities.
Yeah.
But that's the game we play. That's the balance that we strive for, isn't it?
And I think with practice acquisitions, we have quite a clear process of where we go. We'll get the numbers, we'll figure out actually where the numbers work, especially on an associate sort of led model. If it's there or thereabouts, what do we need to do to make the numbers work? And actually, there have been many practices we've seen where it doesn't work. So, on the outside of it, you think, oh, this will be an amazing place to actually get. But actually, if the numbers don't work or won't work, then it's not a very good business decision. And I think it's important to not always be led with the heart. The heart will probably lead you there, but you do need to get the mind involved during it, as well, to make the right decision. But sometimes, we were talking before, like sometimes it's risk. You got to, be able to take risks as well. So it's a really delicate balance, isn't it, James?
It's one of the eternal struggles of an entrepreneur. And then another big one is, okay, do I stick on the path that I'm already on, or do I mix it up and go for something else different? And that's the grass is always greener versus plugging away at something that isn't necessarily giving us that greater return. Anyway, it's all food for thought, really, isn't it? You know what? You actually said something really interesting just then, which I feel like would be really useful for the listeners of the podcast. It sounds like you got a little bit of a system or protocol for when you find a new practice and you're kind of weighing it up and assessing it. If you're, and naturally, I know there's going to be like loads to this and a billion layers to it, and part of it will be
Yeah.
intuition inevitably. Is there a little bit of a checklist that you could share with the listeners today by way of how that looks that might be useful for them, or things to look out for?
It's probably less complex than you think, really. I think
Oh,
my first step is I always want to see the accounts. I ideally want to see management accounts because it's something more current, and to know whether the cash flow of the business works. And you're plugging into the loan, and you're putting a bit of a stress test in terms of if that loan interest rates increase, can you cover that loan? Can you cover the expenses that you have? Then we have it on a benchmark, so what does a normal practice in this sort of level, what should be the key sort of line items? What should the staff wages be, for example? What should other set of expenses be? And if there's a really big outlier, then actually I see it as an opportunity. Probably not staff wages because that's a difficult one to negotiate. But let's say they're spending loads on materials or lab fees or these sort of things. Well, there must be a reason to that, and so we'll play around with those numbers to an extent, and then one-off costs and these sort of things they put personal expenses through the business, but then also sometimes you know they overinflate the profit. With certain, like I used to see quite a few COVID loans used to get put into the accounts, but it was just one-off
no
loan
way.
during COVID.
That's
Like,
hilarious.
like yeah. So you have to be a little bit clued on with some of it.
Nothing to see here.
Yeah.
That's
So yeah,
hilarious.
and then you figure out truly whether you can afford it, and what do you, if what do you need to do to grow it. Now we're very good with the marketing side of it, I believe. So I know that we can invest money into marketing and get something out of it. And then you're just looking for opportunities. So then in the actual business itself, you know, are they doing higher end work? For us, we have a bit of a hub and spoke model as well. So we've got this referral center, but the other practices can refer into the referral center as well, which overall increases the sort of group income. So is there an option of doing that, or is there an option of creating another hub and spoke model somewhere else? And can we add specialists, or can we add higher end work and treatments and these sort of things in there? So these are the sort of things, like basically, where are your opportunities? But does it work financially sitting on its own? And we ended up buying a partnership practice with one of my associates. And we bought that because we wanted somebody actually within the practice itself to drive the business. Because we're finding that the sort of more practices we have, Shreena and I can't be as involved, in the day to day. Well, we are involved day to day, but we can't be involved in driving that clinical side, on a day to day basis. So having these partners, and we've just piloted it, and it's gone really, really well with a partner, really helps.
Yeah, time and bandwidth become the ultimate constraints past a certain point, and that's why it's so helpful to be able to leverage someone else's brain, which is effectively what that is when you've got somebody else who's involved in the decision making. You said something really interesting. You said a few things there really, and you were like, okay, cool, we're looking at the practice, and then we're also looking at the areas where we think we can add value, and those are the practices that represent good opportunities. One thing that you mentioned was marketing,
Mhm.
and you said that because you are au fait or have a decent level of proficiency in that side of things, and a lot of dental practice could be so much better at marketing, right?
Yeah.
Like that's just a given. We all know that, yeah. So I'm just curious, in terms of marketing, from your perspective, how do you add value to this practice? Is it like Google Ads? Is it creating an Instagram account for the practice? How does that look? Or a bit of everything, really, maybe?
So again, I think the practices I tend to look at, I look at practices within communities. And the first part, overall, the best revenue return on investments word of mouth. So actually, if you can get a practice going well in within a community, that's step one. So can you get that out there to local businesses? Can you get in collaborations on social media? We will always create sort of, social media accounts with them. And what these people want to see is they want to build a bit of rapport before they come into the practice, any potential new patients. So show the personality of the place. Show dentists having fun, say happy birthday to people on your team members with an actual picture of them there. Show their personality, because that way you're building that community aspect of it, and they sort of know you before they even come into their practice. So that sort of step one is that community part, but also building the reputation of the practice. And then the second part, yes, Google PPC, but it costs a lot to get it. So you got obviously Facebook marketing, you've got TikTok now, which is there, and all of these, even Instagram and Reels and these sort of things, they have different markets that you can explore. And I'm very lucky. We have an amazing marketing manager, Jesse, who is far more current than me and really, really creative. And we've got a head of growth and development in our team as well, Lee, who focus on growth. And then we've got Shreena and another team member, Kieran, who's focused on projects, and Shreena's the operations side. So we've sort of got both sides, covered. But we need that ingenuity and growth and looking at new trends and all these sort of things in terms of the marketing side. But the thing I've probably learned the most recently is you've got to track that bloody money. So you need to know what's working.
Oh my God, when you said that just then, I was like, yes, 100%. There's a huge difference in spending money on ads and spending money on ads and actually analyzing what the returns are. Also, if you tweak something on the ads, you want to know how it's going to affect things. That literally happened to me 2 days ago, right? I
Right.
changed something and I was like, this is a no-brainer. This is going to work. And it actually did the exact opposite of what I expected it to do. But
Yeah.
I never would have realized that if I actually measured the data. And then when I was looking at it today, I was like, I'm pretty sure if I just do the opposite of what I thought I should have done there, it probably would have worked better. But yeah, you're right. You're right. Listen, Cable,
But
I go on. Sorry.
no, no, I'm just saying you just don't know until you actually have the hard numbers in front of you. What a campaign has done in terms of bums in seats and actual revenue from those bums in seats. Afterwards. So yeah, it's crazy. It's
You
crazy.
you master what you measure is a saying that I love, and it's really true. You can see the answers just staring back at you when you have the data. I want to share something with you, Keiko. Just one more thing before we wrap up. I was talking about, oops, is it? I was talking about the book Traction earlier and how I
Yes.
really like that. Off the back of that, I've actually got another book here called Measure What Matters. Don't know if you ever come across this.
I don't know. No.
Yeah, apparently this is a business classic, this book, and it's all about setting good KPIs, which sounds really dry, but it gets people
Love
like
it.
me excited. So I don't know, maybe that's it. Maybe I'll let you know. I'll send you a book review. How about that, Cable? Or maybe I don't know
Yeah,
if
yeah.
you're a reader, but it might be helpful. I don't know.
I think I'll read it. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that measuring part is so important. Just get to grips with your numbers as a bare minimum. For any practice owners, or if you're about to be practice owners, just get to grips with your numbers. Know what your break even point is for a day, because everything above that is profit, right? And those are the sort of key elements where it gives you these comfort factors. And actually, when you're comfortable in a business, you'll grow it because you're not stressing about all the minutiae.
Boom. There we go. Cable, I just want to thank you personally for sharing your time, wisdom, and knowledge on the podcast today. We could probably I had so much more questions that was just flowing through my head then when you were talking. And I'm sure we could probably make like 5 follow-up podcasts. So let's think about that at some stage. We'll plan that for the future. We'll come back to that 100%. But in the meantime, I just want to thank you on behalf of myself, on behalf of the listeners on the podcast. If people want to connect with you or find out more about Kana Health Group and the education platforms that you run, how would they be best off doing that?
Yeah, so in terms of the academy, kanadentalacademy.com. Please feel free to go to the website and have a little look. And to connect it with me, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, anything, to be honest. They can go through yourself, James. I'm always happy to share and collaborate, and I'm an open book. So yeah, absolutely happy to help any of your listeners in any way I can.
Wunderbar. Well, listen, Cable, as I say, thank you so much. Let's not let this be the last podcast for sure. Let's lock it in now with a virtual handshake. For anybody who's recording it, we're literally shaking hands, we're air shaking hands right now. That's going to happen. In the meantime, hope you have a smashing Thursday and we'll see each other very soon.
James, thank you so much for having me.
Complete pleasure, mate. See you soon.